So, why exactly would the US military, the most powerful fighting force in history, deliberately sink an entire billion-dollar rescue fleet just to protect a tiny object that weighs less than 5 pounds? It sounds like a catastrophic failure of logic, a massive waste of strategic resources, perhaps a desperate act of sabotage. But on October 2026, deep within the freezing silence of the Arctic Circle, this irrational equation became a terrifying, high-stakes reality. We aren't just talking about a minor naval accident here. This was a calculated, coordinated self-destruction. State-of-the-art rescue vessels, cutting-edge hardware, and decades of specialized engineering were all sent to the dark, crushing depths of the Arctic floor on purpose. Why? To safeguard a single, highly classified hard drive known to only a handful of people as Omega-7. To the average person, Omega-7 looks like nothing more than a 2-kilogram slab of metal and silicon. It's light enough to hold in one hand, but in the shadowy world of global electronic warfare and nuclear command, this is quite literally the most dangerous asset on the planet. And right now, it's lost in a place where no one should be able to find it. When the carrier ship went down, Omega-7 didn't just sink, it disappeared under miles of shifting, jagged polar ice and layers of frozen debris. The problem is that traditional search methods are completely useless here. Standard GPS signals cannot penetrate the dense, mineral-heavy ice. Long-range sonar? It's effectively blind. The massive frozen shelf acts as a perfect acoustic shield, scattering every radio frequency and acoustic pulse the US Navy tries to throw at it. It is a ghost in the machine, hidden in a place where the temperature hits 40 below and the water pressure can crush a reinforced hull like a tin can. But the Pentagon isn't giving up. They are burning through billions of dollars just to keep the search area clear. How do you find a 2-kilogram needle in a 1,000-square-mile haystack of solid ice? To understand this mission, you have to look at the terrifying technology they're using to see through the impossible. To find Omega-7, the Navy deployed a system so advanced it is technically classified under 3 different national security subclauses. It is called a High-Resolution Nuclear Magnetic Resonance Sensor, or NMR for short. In the civilian world, you might know this technology as the core of an MRI machine at your local hospital. But there is a massive difference. While a hospital MRI looks at a stationary patient from inches away, this militarized version has to scan through miles of solid ice and salt water while moving at 20 knots. Normally, a nuclear magnetic resonance system is the size of a garage and requires a team of technicians to operate. But for this mission, Skunkworks engineers had to shrink that entire superconducting array down to fit inside the nose cone of a deep-sea submersible. How exactly does it work? It doesn't look for the hard drive itself. Instead, it looks for the unique magnetic signature of the drive's rare earth internal components. Every element has what scientists call a Larmor frequency, a specific rate at which its atomic nuclei wobble when exposed to a magnetic field. The NMR sensor casts an invisible, hyper-focused magnetic beam into the abyss, forcing the atoms in the metal to align. When they snap back into place, they release a faint, distinct electromagnetic echo. Imagine trying to find a single, specific human hair frozen inside a skyscraper-sized block of ice. Now imagine that skyscraper is buried under another 5 miles of freezing, churning seawater. That is the mathematical impossibility the Deep Strike 7 team was facing, and the ocean doesn't make it easy. The Arctic deep is a chaotic mess of electromagnetic noise. You have the Earth's natural magnetic pull, shifting tectonic plates, and the massive electrical charge generated by the friction of deep-sea currents. To a standard sensor, the data looks like a wall of white noise. To find the drive, the NMR system uses a heavy-duty AI processing engine that filters out trillions of data points every second, listening for that one specific chirp of the Omega-7's internal magnets. This brings us to the men and women tasked with the impossible. Deep Strike 7. This isn't your standard salvage crew. These are elite Navy saturation divers and robotics engineers who live for months at a time in pressurized habitats. For this operation, they were operating out of a specialized stealth carrier stationed miles away from the target site to avoid detection by Russian Arctic patrols. Out here, the environment is your primary enemy. On the surface, the air temperature is a bone-chilling minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit, cold enough to shatter standard carbon steel like glass if it isn't treated with specialized polymers. But as you go down, the danger changes. For every 10 meters you descend, the pressure increases by 1 atmosphere. At the depths where the Omega-7 is resting, the water pressure is over 15,000 pounds per square inch. That is like having the weight of an entire fleet of school buses pressing down on every single square inch of your hull. If a single weld fails or a single seal develops a microscopic crack, the water doesn't just leak in, it enters with the force of a high-powered industrial laser, cutting through flesh and bone in a fraction of a second. The Deep Strike 7 team was using a one-of-a-kind autonomous recovery vehicle nicknamed the Ice Pick. It's a titanium-hulled robot equipped with the NMR array and a pair of high-torque hydraulic manipulators designed to cut through frozen sediment. For the first 12 hours, the mission was a textbook success. The ice pick dived deep, survived the crushing descent, and actually managed to lock onto a faint magnetic return. The hair in the ice skyscraper had been found, but in the Arctic, the environment always gets a vote. Just as the robot began its final approach to the debris field, a massive underwater ice shelf, the size of a small city, shifted. This wasn't a slow drift, it was a catastrophic tectonic failure. The shift triggered a massive turbidity current, a high-speed underwater landslide of silt, ice chunks, and freezing water. The ice pick was caught in the middle of it. Back on the carrier, the monitors went from crystal-clear telemetry to a screen full of red warning lights. The impact didn't destroy the robot, but it did something worse. It jammed the ice pick's primary propulsion thrusters and severed its fiber optic tether. Now, the most expensive recovery tool in the US arsenal was pinned under a ledge of jagged ice 5 miles down with no way to navigate. And then, the lead analyst saw the one thing they were all dreading on the thermal map. The landslide hadn't just moved the robot. It had opened up a massive tectonic fissure just a few hundred yards from where the Omega-7 was resting. The seabed was literally opening up. Due to the angle of the slope, the hard drive was now slowly sliding toward that abyss. The clock didn't just start, it began to scream. The team calculated the rate of the slide. They had exactly 60 minutes. If that drive falls into the fissure, it will sink into the Earth's crust, buried under miles of shifting rock where no sensor on Earth will ever find it again. 60 minutes to fix a dead robot, navigate a graveyard of shifting ice, and secure a drive that holds the keys to the world's nuclear arsenal. But as the pressure mounted and the oxygen levels in the control room seemed to thin, the mission commander realized that the standard recovery plan was dead. To get that drive back before it vanished forever, they would have to do the unthinkable. They would have to turn a rescue mission into a demolition derby, and the price of success was about to become higher than anyone dared to imagine. When the order was finally broadcast, it wasn't a request for a tactical withdrawal, it was a death sentence for $1 billion of American naval engineering. In the high-stakes world of modern special operations, the destruction of your own assets isn't always a sign of failure. Sometimes, it is the only way to ensure survival. To prevent Russian Akula-class submarines from reaching the debris field, the US military initiated a steel wall protocol. They didn't just abandon their ships, they deliberately blew the hulls of their own support vessels, sending hundreds of millions of dollars in hardware to the bottom of the Arctic floor in a matter of seconds. Watching $1 billion of taxpayer money vanish into the abyss might seem like madness, but to the Pentagon, this was a necessary sacrifice. By creating a massive, jagged graveyard of twisted steel and sunken hulls, they effectively created an acoustic and physical fortress around the Omega-7 hard drive. The debris field now acts as a perfect shield, generating so much chaotic sonar interference that no enemy submarine can navigate the area without risking a catastrophic collision. In a world where information is more valuable than steel, burning $1 billion is a small price to pay to keep American secrets in the dark. But while the ships were sinking, the real horror was unfolding 5 miles below the surface. To understand the stakes of this mission, you have to look at what happens to the human body when the technology designed to protect it fails. In the crushing depths of the Arctic, the water pressure is over 15,000 pounds per square inch. At this level, the environment is no longer just hostile, it is a physical force of nature that defies biological logic. Imagine you are one of the Deep Strike 7 divers. You are encased in a titanium-reinforced atmospheric suit, marvel of modern engineering, designed to keep the weight of the entire ocean at bay. But what happens if that suit develops a microscopic breach? It isn't like a leak in a submarine. Because of the pressure differential, the water doesn't just enter, it enters with the velocity of a supersonic jet. If your suit's integrity is compromised even by a fraction of a millimeter, the consequences are instantaneous and terrifying. The massive external pressure would immediately overwhelm your internal biology. We are talking about an effect similar to a high-powered microwave pulse, but purely mechanical. The pressure wave would bypass your eardrums entirely, causing the target to hear a sound, a violent, metallic roar that originates inside their own head. This is the sound of your own skull resisting the weight of the abyss. As the pressure forces its way in, your capillaries, the tiny vessels that carry blood to your brain and lungs, would begin to rupture under the sheer force of the rapid compression. This leads to reported cases of internal trauma, where blood literally begins to fill the lungs and leak from the nose and eyes long before you even realize your suit has failed. At higher power levels, that rapid tissue expansion and subsequent compression can cause cavitation in your bodily fluids, the formation of microscopic bubbles in your blood. When those bubbles collapse, they release tiny shockwaves that damage your internal organs from the inside out. You would feel an intense vibration in your gut, leading to severe nausea, dizziness, and a level of pain that effectively paralyzes the body before the water even touches your skin. So why would anyone volunteer for a mission where the price of a single technical glitch is a biological slugfest that ends in total internal collapse? Why would the US military willingly destroy a billion-dollar fleet to protect a slab of silicon that weighs less than 5 pounds? The answer is simple, and it is far more terrifying than the crushing depth of the ocean. For the last 20 minutes, you've probably been wondering what exactly is on that Omega-7 hard drive. You might have thought it was bank records, or perhaps the blueprints for a new stealth fighter. The reality is much darker. Omega-7 does not contain money or engineering files. It contains the post-strike nuclear authentication keys for the entire US global arsenal. In a hostile scenario, if those codes were to fall into the hands of a foreign power, the entire concept of nuclear deterrence would vanish. The enemy wouldn't just be able to stop a counterattack, they could effectively lock down the US military's ability to respond to a nuclear threat. The Omega-7 is the fail-safe for the end of the world. That is exactly why the ghost of a billion-dollar fleet now rests at the bottom of the Arctic. To the US military, losing ships and hardware is a tragedy of logistics, but losing the Omega-7 is a tragedy of civilization. When the Deep Strike 7 commander looked at the thermal maps and saw the hard drive sliding toward the tectonic fissure, he wasn't just looking at a lost piece of tech, he was looking at a ticking clock for global security. In this unforgiving landscape, a standard rescue mission or a simple recovery beacon isn't enough. It requires a level of sacrifice that most people can't even comprehend. To keep American personnel alive and American secrets hidden, the military had to turn the ocean floor into a fortress of steel and bone. The name of the mission was deliberate: Omega for the end, and 7 for the team tasked with preventing it during the final moments of the recovery. As the tectonic plates groaned and the massive wall of sunken ships settled into the silt, the divers knew that their window was closing. They weren't just fighting the Russians or the shifting ice, they were fighting the physics of the planet itself. The implications are staggering. Imagine being a fugitive or an enemy combatant trying to hide in a world where the CIA can track your heartbeat from 40 miles away. Now imagine being the government that has to decide whether to burn $1 billion of your own money just to keep the world from ending. The recovery of the Omega-7 is a stark reminder of just how unforgiving modern special operations can be. It is a necessary sacrifice to deny the enemy a massive technological windfall. In the end, bringing American personnel home alive and keeping American secrets in the dark is the only objective that matters, even if the cost of that objective is written in the blood of the ocean and the wreckage of a billion-dollar fleet. In our digital age, we often think of value in terms of things we can touch: massive hulls, roaring engines, and billions of dollars of forged steel. But as the Arctic floor now shows, the most valuable asset on Earth isn't made of iron, made of data. It's a series of ones and zeros that can stop a war or start one. So, I have to ask, is a single bit of information truly worth more than an entire naval fleet? To bring this story to life, we make original videos from scratch, meticulously animated by humans. We believe that to truly understand the visceral reality of a billion-dollar sacrifice, you need a human eye, someone who can capture the crushing pressure of the deep and the terrifying silence of the North. Every frame is built to show you the reality of modern operations that the public rarely gets to see. If you found this analysis insightful, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into the world's most classified technology. We're uncovering the hidden engineering and the impossible decisions that shape our world every single day. The Omega-7 is just one drive in a very large, very dark ocean. It reminds us that in the end, the most powerful weapon isn't the one that makes the loudest noise. It's the one that nobody can find. So, what's more important to you? The steel that protects our borders, or the secrets that keep the world from falling apart?